Prologue. Tyler Timberlake pressed his nose to the glass as the SUV rolled through SPITE Lane's entry gates. Trees covered the entrance, obscuring the sky. The gates were broken and surrounded by thorny weeds. To the side of the unpaved road, Tyler spotted a discarded bike rusting out, the front wheel missing. This place was creepy. His discomfort made him more wiggly than ever. "Tyler, stop kicking my seat," his father, Ren Timberlake, grumbled from the front of the car. Molly Mapplethorpe, the quirky real estate lady, drove. His father sat in the passenger seat. Miss Mapplethorpe had been babbling a mile a minute, going on and on about what a wonderful place this was to raise a child. It was quiet and secluded, she explained. No through traffic, and the homes were oversized with plenty of room to run around. "There had better be room for running," Ren said, and Tyler knew what that meant. "Go run around outside," was one of his father's favorite phrases. The tall pines that loomed over the entrance parted as soon as they were through, revealing an open expanse of land shaped into rolling mounds, with strange-looking houses sitting atop them. The street wound between the houses, back and forth. Tyler stopped agitating momentarily as the car passed a dilapidated home with a broken concrete sidewalk, sagging front porch, and boarded-up windows. He could have sworn he saw someone peeking out behind a broken pane of glass. He squinted, but a glint of sunlight prevented him from seeing anything as they drove away. Tyler wasn't sure he wanted to live in this neighborhood, no matter how much room there was for running. "You said this one has a motivated seller?" Ren asked. "Oh, yes, indeed," replied Molly, whose name was on the for sale signs in what seemed like half of SPITE Lane's yards. "I'm sure they would consider any reasonable offer." The SUV pulled into a gravel driveway that sloped sharply upwards toward a Victorian home that had been painted dark brown with Kelly green trim. The windows were tall and skinny, and the glass in them was wobbly. But at least none of them were boarded up. Tyler supposed it was better than their last house, a tiny cabin in the northern woods where he'd practically frozen to death in the winter. Lost Key, Florida, was warm all year, his father promised. No snow, and just a couple of miles from the beach where he could swim around all day. Tyler hopped out of the car as soon as it was parked, following his dad and Molly Mapplethorpe up the wide, creaking porch steps and through the front door. The inside of the house was quiet and musty, filled with furniture draped with dust-covered sheets. "It comes furnished?" Ren asked, as he stopped next to the staircase, one hand resting on the thick wooden balustrade. "Oh, yes, that's common around here," Molly answered. "Probably a second property, you know, a snowbird who only visited in winter." "Is that a problem? Do you have a lot of things?" They didn't. The cabin had been tiny, and much of their furniture had been in disrepair. Ren had said they could buy new furniture when they settled down in Lost Key. He could see the stifled excitement on his father's face. Free stuff. Tyler's dad loved free stuff. "Not a problem at all," said Ren, pleased. The adults walked from room to room, looking inside closets and under sinks, turning faucets and light switches on and off as they went. Tyler lagged behind. He wandered around the first floor, passing the staircase as the adults climbed it. It sat in the center of the house, such that the living areas, dining room, and kitchen formed a circle that could be run round and round. Tyler, always full of energy, jogged a couple of laps. Bored, he began doing the thing his father hated most: touching things. Tyler ran his fingers through the dust on the countertops. He peeked under the sheets at the stuffy old furniture and poked their lumpy cushions. He dragged his heels against the squeaky wooden floors and pressed himself against the walls. The windows stretched up to almost meet the 10-foot ceilings and were adorned with long, velvety curtains that rested on the floor. Tyler yanked at a curtain, wrapped himself up behind it, and imagined startling the strange real estate lady when she came back downstairs. With his nose pressed against it, Tyler sniffed at the fabric's distinct aroma. It was sickly sweet, like sticking his whole face in a bucket of grape Kool-Aid powder, and the smell made Tyler slightly nauseous. He turned away to face the window. Looking outside, he saw the backyard. It sloped down towards 2 other houses and was peppered with strange wooden boxes that sat askew. Tyler wondered what was inside them. Absent-mindedly, he placed his hands on the windowsill to steady himself, but he flinched when his fingers touched something small and crunchy, like dried cereal. He pulled his hands away and looked down. Bugs. Piles of dead bugs sat on the painted windowsill. He was grossed out, but also curious. Bending over to take a better look, he realized they were bees with their characteristic yellow and black striping. Their crispy little wings fluttered as his breath swept over them. They were dried out, dead, had to be. And yet, Tyler swore he could hear a faint buzzing sound. He was about to turn his ear to them, getting as close as he could, when the curtain whipped open. "Tyler, I've told you 1,000 times, don't touch things that aren't yours." Wren scowled at him in exasperation. From across the house, Molly Maplethorpe called, "Are you ready to see the backyard?" Tyler took that as his cue and bolted like a champion sprinter across the house. Molly Maplethorpe had said there was lots of room to run around outside, and she wasn't kidding. As soon as Tyler made it out the back door, he leapt off the back steps. His feet slammed against the packed dirt path, and he ran a labyrinth course through the yard. The warm November sun was unfamiliar to him, but welcome. He had hated being cooped up for months at a time up north. Wren inspected the exterior of the home as Tyler ran in circles. He was a jet, flying through the air. He was a bird of prey, squawking and hunting for his dinner. He was a plane. Vroom! He was... Tyler stopped in front of one of the strange wooden boxes that sat on top of a couple of sinking cinder blocks in the middle of the backyard. It looked like it had been fashioned out of whatever scraps of wood had been lying around. It had no obvious openings. Tyler ran his hands over it, trying to figure out how to pop the lid. It was stuck. Tyler squeezed his fingers into a small crack and tried to pry it open. But there was a sticky substance holding it together. The more he handled it, the more his hands were covered in goo. Behind him, he heard the adults approach. "Beekeeping," the agent was saying. "Isn't that just the sweetest thing ever?" No pun intended. "So, these are hives?" Wren asked. He put a meaty hand on Tyler's shoulder and gave it an uncomfortable squeeze. "Tyler, stop touching things that aren't yours." Tyler had already pulled his hands away and was inspecting them. The sticky substance was golden and translucent. He sniffed it. It smelled like flowers. And something else. Something he couldn't place. Yes, yes, Molly Mapplethorpe cooed. I believe the former owner was a backyard beekeeper. Isn't that adorable? That's what this neighborhood is all about. Getting back to simpler times. Lots of folks around here grow their own vegetables, raise chickens. As if on cue, a rooster crowed. They all looked around but couldn't place the sound. It crowed again. Once. Twice. But then the crowing noise morphed into a strange cackle. Molly interrupted. It's so pastoral, isn't it? Have you ever considered keeping bees? Tyler stretched the goo between his fingers, sniffed it again, and then cautiously stuck out the tip of his tongue to taste it. Oh my, it was delicious. Funny you should ask, answered Wren, with a thoughtful hand on his beard. I'm a strong believer in the importance of self-sufficiency. Tyler stuck a sticky finger in his mouth. Honey. People these days are far too soft. They allow the government to do everything for them. Drool dripped down Tyler's chin as he lapped the goo from his hands. I don't think people these days care about survival the way they should. Sometimes we just have to buckle down and make sacrifices. Tyler felt funny. His vision began to blur. The only thing in focus was the makeshift hive. Honey. Oh, that honey. It was amazing. It was important. The honey on his hands was gone, and he needed more. He rushed toward the wooden box and pressed his tongue against the crevice where the sticky goo hid. Tyler, his father yelled. You're 8 years old. Act your age. Tyler felt the grip of his father's hand crush his bicep as he was yanked away from the hive. Then he felt the harsh slap of his father's other hand against his face. In the background, Molly Mapplethorpe gasped at the sight. What did I tell you? Wren boomed. Tyler thought his father's voice sounded strange, like it was coming through an old radio, the signal buzzing slightly over the air. He looked up. In front of him, 100 tiny wrens danced about, as though he were looking through a kaleidoscope. But his attention's focus was singular. His father's commanding voice, usually terrifying, was calming. His desire for honey disappeared temporarily. He felt unusually compelled to do whatever his father said. I'm sorry, Father, Tyler said, in a soft, obedient tone. You're right. I'll stand still. Wren released the boy, and Tyler stood catatonically at his side. Surprised, Wren cleared his throat and said, Thank you. Then Wren turned to the agent. I'm sorry for his little outburst. Molly Mapplethorpe forced a smile. Not at all. We'll take it, said his father. Wonderful, the agent replied. I'll draw up the paperwork right away. The adults began to walk towards the house, away from the hives, and Tyler followed. As the spell cast by his father's voice faded, all he could think about was the honey. The delicious, sugary honey. And how much he wanted more of it. He couldn't wait to move into the new house, and for his father to start raising bees. Then there'd be plenty of honey. Plenty for Tyler and his dad. And Tyler would do anything for more.